Hello, Bacho. Hope you are doing well. So we have a text here that gives us the idea about um, one of the particular topic. So before we go for this text, let's read the direction. What does it say? That the direction of the text says that read the following passage and answer the question. Right. So let's go for reading the text and we'll come to know about what this passage is all about. In the 1930s, many European academics wanted refugee in the United States. Why? Because they escaping the quickly deteriorating political situation in their home countries. So they found out like their home countries where the political situation is deteriorating or degrading. So deteriorating means called as a degrading, right? You can say that degrading the condition, degrading the condition, degrading the condition of what political situation in their home country. Jewish scholars were cleansed. So cleansed means what? That's something called as a, yeah, the scholars, so Jewish scholars, so who were removed, right? So why they were removed now? Because you understood that one of the idea about German means a biased culture from the academic in Germany with the 1933 law for the restoration of the civil service and could sense that they were likely to lose more than their jobs if they stayed. So who? Jewish scholars. If they stayed there, they would lose their jobs as well as more than that. Non-Jewish scholars of a liberal or left persuasion also saw no future for themselves in Germany or Austria under Nazi occupation, and often had good reason to fear the same kind of a fate that would befall the Jewish population of Europe. So prominent in these vulnerable groups means referring to Jewish scholars, non-Jewish uh, people also. So these people were philosophers, among them the majority of the Vienna Circle. So when you talk about Vienna Circle, it means referring to the majority of the philosophers, uh, or you talk about mathematicians and scientists, right? So that is what it is referring to the means Vienna Circle. So we simply point out that philosophers, majority of the philosophers. So it is no exaggeration to say that their transplantation to the US transformed the philosophy in that country. So obviously these people who moved to the country US, so uh, so they have certain impact onto this particular country. So it changes the philosophy in that country, making English the dominant language of international philosophical inquiry, at the same time depriving Germany and Austria of their best philosophical minds, with consequences for decades thereafter. So we just read the text and we understood that this text give us the idea about what? About the migration of European academics, especially philosophers, to the United States in the 1930s due to the degrading political situation in their home countries. Jewish scholars faced persecution under the 1933 law for the restoration of the civil service in Germany, and many intellectuals of liberal or left leaning views also felt unsafe under the Nazi Germany or Nazi occupation in Germany and Austria. So, among them, you would find out the vulnerable groups, so including philosophers who wanted refuge in the United States to escape persecution and secure their academic future. So, a group of influential philosophers who are known as the Vienna Circle was significantly affected by this migration, and their move to the US had huge consequences for the development of philosophy in US itself and the international philosophical community. So, on the basis of that, we draw the idea that the passage suggests that the flow of these European philosophers to the United States had a transformative effect on philosophy in the country. So, that is what the conclusion we can draw also. So, it led to English becoming the dominant language of international philosophical inquiry, and it deprived Germany and Austria of some of their best philosophical minds, impacting the intellectual landscape in those countries for decades to come, isn't it? Now, in that case, this is what we draw the kind of a summary out of this text, and I hope you understand the means explanation of the text. Now let's move for the question. What does the question ask here? The question states here, what conclusion can be made from the passage? So it is a what? It is a conclusion based questions, and stating that what conclusion can be uh, made from the passage. So let's go to the option and see that what are the options are pointed on the basis of the question. So the first option, which is suggested about the European academics who played to the United States in the 1930s had no impact on the academic landscape. So if you observe that just some time ago, while I explained the text, I pointed that uh, their visit to the country called the US, right, makes a great impact. How? Now, because the passage itself highlights the significant impact that European academics, particularly philosophers, had on the United States on the basis of the academic landscape. So they do have, right? So look into the second option. So in that case, we considered that option A is not true, right? So they had certain impact on the academic landscape on US. So as for the passage, it is stated development of the English language and also philosophies. So all such kind of a things. So moving to the second option stated the Vienna Circle was not affected by the political situation in Germany and Austria. Now, this is again indicating a kind of a thought where we can say it is not correct because the passage specifically mentions that the majority of the Vienna Circle were among the easily affected groups of philosophers who wanted refuge in the United States, indicating that they were affected by the political situation in Germany and Austria. That is why they wanted to settle themselves refuge in the United States. Then how we would say that the Vienna Circle was not affected? So they were affected. So it's somehow called as the option is not true. So coming to the third question. So the third question stated here, uh, let's see, the relocation of the, the relocation of European philosophers so to the United States contributed to the decline of what? Decline of German and Austrian philosophy while strengthening English as the dominant language of international philosophical inquiry. So what does it say? The relocation of Europeans, so European philosopher who relocated themselves in the United States, so contributed to the decreasing of German and Austrian philosophy while strengthening English as the dominant language of international philosophical inquiry. Yes, that's what we could find out in the passage, right? That prominent in these vulnerable groups were philosophers. So it is no exaggeration to say that their transplantation to the US uh, changed the US philosophy in that country and making English the dominant language of international philosophical inquiry. So the last paragraph gives us that conclusion. So we could say that option C is correct, right? So as per the text, we can draw this particular option, right? So, but before we consider C as the final answer, let's look into the option D. The political situation in Europe, the political situation in Europe during the 1930s had no significant consequences for academic and scholars. So obviously, when it is stated no significant, there is some kind of a, means significant consequences for which for whom academics and scholars. Like we could say that on the basis of the passage clearly outlines the severe consequences of the political situation in Europe during 1930s for 1930s, right? So 1930s for academics and scholars, particularly those who were Jewish or had liberal or left-leaning views. So in that case, we could say means option D is proving wrong, because the political situation in Europe during the 1930s had a significant consequences, right? It's not that no significant. So that is why A, B, D are considered wrong options. So option, finally, we could move to the means option C as the correct answer. Thank you. If you understood this, thank you.